I came home from church with the hymn still humming in my throat. I'd worn my blue sweater, the one with the pearl buttons, because Pastor Harris always said it matched my spirit. I carried banana bread wrapped in foil, meant for the kitchen counter where Arnie liked to snack when no one was looking. The air smelled like pine needles and thawing grass. It was supposed to be a normal Sunday. But then I saw the boxes, not one or two, all of them, every corner of my life, taped up in brown cardboard and stacked on the curb like trash waiting for pickup. I stopped in the driveway. There was my lamp, my framed picture of Arnie at age 9, with frosting on his nose, even my Bible, with the soft worn leather, peeking out from between a stack of kitchen towels. I thought there had been a fire. That was my first thought. A leak, a burst pipe, some emergency that forced Anna to pack things up to protect them. I walked slowly to the porch. My key turned in the lock, but the door didn't open. Locked from the inside, I knocked. No answer. I knocked again, louder. Finally, the door creaked open. Anna stood there. Her hair was perfect, her expression blank. I held up the banana bread, my voice trembling. "Is something wrong with the house?" She didn't take the bread. "No," she said. "The house is fine." I looked back at the boxes, then back at her. "Then why is my room out here?" She glanced over her shoulder, like she didn't want the neighbors to see. "We just thought it was time." "Time for what?" I asked, though I already felt the answer twisting in my gut like a hook. Anna stepped out and gently closed the door behind her. "We need the space, Almeda. You've been staying here a while. Arnie and I—" "Staying?" I whispered. "I mean, you've lived with us for nearly a year. It's not forever, right?" My hands were still holding the banana bread. It was warm. My bed, the one I slept in the night before, was on the sidewalk, leaning against a box labeled Old Photos. I didn't cry. I just asked again, quietly, hopelessly, "Where's my bed, Anna?" She didn't answer. But the click of the door closing said everything. I stood there for 13 minutes. I counted. Not because I wanted to, but because when someone moves your life to the curb, your mind starts clinging to whatever rhythm it can find, like counting seconds will somehow slow time down or rewind it. 13 minutes. That's how long I stood on the porch, holding banana bread in one hand and the tiny wooden cross from my necklace in the other. The same cross my late husband carved for me when we were courting, before life got hard and short. My hands wouldn't stop shaking. I sat down on the curb next to the boxes. The spring wind kept tugging at the tape, flapping the cardboard lids like mouths trying to speak. They were packed carelessly. Anna hadn't even wrapped the porcelain angel Arnie made in second grade. Its wing was chipped. My winter coat was shoved in with a stack of church bulletins. My arthritis cream spilled over a box of Christmas cards I'd saved for decades. I dug through them, not to salvage, just to understand. Why? Why now? Why without a word? I heard laughter inside the house, distant, casual, as if I hadn't just been evicted from my own life, as if I were a stranger passing by. The cross in my hand dug into my palm. A neighbor drove by, slowed, watched, didn't stop. Shame is heavy in a small town like ours. Everyone knows everyone. They don't have to ask what happened. They just tilt their heads and keep going. I finally stood. My knees crackled, but I lifted the lightest box, pillows and linens, and walked to the garage. The door was unlocked. It smelled like sawdust and cold. I cleared a corner behind the water heater, laid the blankets down, and sat. For now, this would be home. Not because I accepted it, but because I had nowhere else to go. Not yet. I used to love Sundays, the stillness, the way the light hit the stained glass at St. Margaret's, just as the choir reached the second verse of Come Thou Fount. The potluck tables, lined with deviled eggs and fruit salad. The way children ran through the gravel lot in their too tight dress shoes. Now I hated Sundays, because this one, this bright, perfect, blooming Idaho Sunday, was the day they pushed me out. Not with hands, with silence, with a smile that didn't reach the eyes, with phrases like, "We thought you understood," and "It's time to start the next chapter." I didn't remember ever agreeing to any chapter. The garage was cold that night. My back ached from the concrete. I wrapped myself in my old Afghan and used a box of paperback devotional as a pillow. The same ones Anna had once complimented, calling them charming little relics. Now they were stuffing. Around midnight, I heard the house door creak. I stayed still. Anna's voice, low, urgent. "She's still out there. Arnie. She won't stay long. She's embarrassed. She's not getting the message. Maybe you should talk to her. Make it clear." A pause. Then Arnie, quieter. "She raised me, Anna. It's not that easy." Another pause. Then the slam of a door. I closed my eyes. I didn't cry, but I remembered everything. When Arnie was 3 and had a fever so high he shook, I stayed up all night with cold compresses and psalms playing from the radio. When Anna forgot her mother's birthday, and I rushed to the store to buy a card and mail it that day. When they moved into my home after Arnie lost his job. When I said, "Stay as long as you need." I never counted the things I gave. But that night, I started, not out of bitterness, out of clarity. Because love, when it's ignored long enough, becomes evidence. And I was building my case. Even if no one knew it yet, people like Anna don't make mistakes, they curate. She always called herself intentional. With her words, with her parenting, with the way she labeled every spice jar in the kitchen by hand. And she'd planned my removal with the same careful grace she used to fold the napkins at Thanksgiving. I realized it the morning after the boxes. The sun was up. The dew hadn't burned off yet. I crept out of the garage with stiff joints and the bitter taste of silence in my mouth. The boxes were gone. I blinked. They hadn't just packed my life, they'd taken it away. I knocked on the door again, lighter this time. Anna opened it like she was expecting a delivery. "Oh," she said, "you're up early." I said nothing. She shifted her tone, smiling. "I figured you'd want us to store those boxes. It's going to rain tomorrow." Arnie took them to the shed. To the shed. It had a padlock. Only Arnie had the key. "That was kind," I said, watching her eyes closely. She looked relieved, like my calmness made her job easier. She handed me a lukewarm mug of herbal tea, the kind I never drank. "We're just trying to do what's best for everyone." That phrase, "what's best for everyone," it always means someone else has decided you don't count. I took the mug, let it warm my fingers, didn't drink it. As she turned to go, I asked, "How long have you been planning this?" She froze, just for a second, then turned, face blank. "I don't know what you mean." "You packed every drawer. You didn't forget a single charger, not one photo frame. You didn't scramble. You executed." Her eyes narrowed. "I think you're misunderstanding." "No," I said softly. "I think I finally understand." She turned and closed the door. Not a slam. Just a soft, final push. That was the moment I knew. This wasn't panic or miscommunication. This was surgical. They didn't forget me. They removed me. And like any removal, it had a beginning, middle, and now, an end. But what they forgot, what Anna underestimated, is that I'd lived a whole life before that house, and I still had room left to fight. It wasn't Anna's silence that broke me. It was Arnie's eyes. The next day, I caught him alone in the driveway. He was closing the trunk of his car, keys dangling from his hand. I stood there for a moment before he noticed me. Just a few feet away, bundled in the same Afghan I'd wrapped him in during childhood fevers. "Morning," he said, too casual. "Arnie," I began, voice low. "Can we talk?" He didn't meet my gaze, just stared at the gravel under his shoes. "You don't have to explain everything," I said, "but I need to hear it from you. Did you agree to this? Did you help her pack my things?" He rubbed the back of his neck, still looking down. "Mom, it's not what you think." I stepped closer. "Then what is it?" A long pause. Then, barely audible. "We just need space." "Space," I repeated. "So you put my memories on the curb?" He flinched, just slightly. But enough. I took a deep breath, willing myself not to cry. "I gave you everything I had. After your father died, I didn't move to Florida. I didn't remarry. I stayed. I helped raise Noah when you couldn't afford daycare. I paid off your first car. I cooked every Sunday meal." "Stop," he said sharply. That was the first time he really looked at me. And it hurt worse than if he hadn't. His eyes were hollow, not cruel, just empty. Like someone who had already grieved me and buried the mess under logic and convenience. "I didn't want it like this," he said. "But Anna, she's been under stress. She needs her space. And sometimes you forget things. It's getting harder." "No, Arnie," I said, calm and clear. "What's getting harder is pretending you don't see what she's doing." He swallowed, eyes flickering to the window, where Anna stood, arms crossed, watching us. And then he said the words I'll never forget. "I don't want to choose sides." But he already had. And his eyes looked away. I found it while looking for socks. The garage was colder than usual that morning, and my toes had started to ache. Most of my things were still locked away in the shed, but one box had been left behind, torn on one side, slightly damp from last night's rain. I opened it with stiff fingers. On top of my scarves, wedged between my reading glasses and an old church bulletin, was a note, plain white paper, folded once, written in Anna's handwriting. It wasn't addressed to me. It simply read, "Try to make this easy. No Mom, no Almeda, not even please, just that. Try to make this easy." As if I were a checklist, a chore, a fading nuisance, taking up space in their lives. As if I owed them ease. After all the years I spent making everything around them soft, bearable, whole. I sat down on the edge of the cot I'd fashioned out of old cushions. The paper trembled in my hands, even though the air was still. I thought about how many times I had made it easy. When Arnie lost his job and moved back in, I said nothing. When Anna rearranged my kitchen cabinets without asking, I smiled. When they turned my bedroom into a guest room, I slept on a fold-out couch without complaint. I had folded and folded and folded myself small, and now she was asking for one more crease. I looked at the note again, then I crumpled it, not violently, just firmly, with finality, because I finally saw what they wanted. Not a mother-in-law, not a grandmother, not a woman, a ghost, someone quiet, invisible, willing to disappear so their life could look tidy from the outside. But I was not born for vanishing. That night, I didn't cry. I wrote. I wrote down every detail. The boxes, the lock, Arnie's words, and now, the note. Then I tucked it all in an envelope and slid it into the bottom of my purse. Because if they wanted a ghost, they were going to learn. Ghosts remember everything. They noticed. Of course they did. I missed one Sunday, then two. By the third, my absence was no longer a private matter. At St. Margaret's, 3 weeks without Almeda Clark meant one of two things: you were dead, or something worse had happened. So when I walked back into church on the fourth Sunday, hair uncombed, coat too thin for the chill, heads turned, not judgment, worry, whispers. And then Helen Parks, the pastor's wife, crossed the sanctuary like a woman on a mission. She took one look at my face and didn't ask how I was. She asked, "What did they do?" I tried to lie. "It's just temporary," I said. "They needed the space. It's fine, really." But she wasn't buying it. "Temporary doesn't look like that," she said, nodding at the scarf around my shoulders. "That scarf used to hang in your bedroom window." I froze. She placed her hand on mine. "You were always the one to bring food to the new widows, the one who made room at the table. You raised Arnie in this church, and now you show up looking like someone's afterthought?" I didn't have an answer. After the service, 4 other women pulled me aside: Alice, Joy, Carla, even Mrs. Henderson, who never liked Anna's tone. They didn't ask for proof. They believed me with their eyes. One of them offered her spare room. Another gave me a lawyer's card. Someone else slipped $20 into my coat pocket when I wasn't looking. But I didn't take any of it. Not yet. Because as much as I ached for shelter, I wasn't finished. Not while my name was still on a piece of paper somewhere in that house. Not while the key to my future was hanging on a hook, labeled storage. I walked home that afternoon, with the choir still echoing behind me. And for the first time since the boxes hit the curb, I felt something strange under my ribs. Not sadness, not shame, resolve. The lock had been changed, not with noise or announcement, not with permission or explanation, just changed. I discovered it the following Thursday when Anna asked me to grab something from the shed, as if I still had access, as if it was a favor, not a test. The key that used to hang on a red ribbon by the back door no longer worked. I tried it 3 times, each time slower, as if gentleness might somehow restore trust between metal and memory. Click, twist, nothing. I knocked on the shed door out of instinct. Of course, no one answered. I stepped back and looked at it. Small, unassuming, painted the same beige as the siding of the house. Inside that shed were my photo albums, my journals, the quilt I spent 2 years stitching by hand after Arnie left for college, my past, my proof. I walked back to the house. Anna was at the kitchen counter, slicing cucumbers like a woman with nothing to hide. "The key doesn't work," I said. She didn't look up. "Oh, we had the locks changed. The old ones were rusted. Then I'll need the new key." She paused, wiped her hands on a towel, and finally looked at me. "We're reorganizing," she said. "It's chaotic in there. Just let us handle it." "Handle what, exactly?" She smiled. "Your things. Your things. Not mine. Not anymore." I wanted to scream, but I didn't. Instead, I nodded, quiet, controlled. I walked to the garage, sat down, opened my notebook, added a new entry. March 17th, shed lock changed, access revoked, items withheld. Then I underlined it 3 times. I wasn't just losing access to objects. I was losing access to evidence. And in that moment, I realized the truth. They didn't just want me gone, they wanted me forgotten. But I had remembered too much to disappear quietly. I heard it through the wall, thin, dry wall, the kind Arnie insisted on installing himself when he turned my old sewing room into a modern guest suite. I was sitting in the garage, writing in my notebook, when Anna's voice came through, clearer than she realized. "She's still here," she said. Arnie's voice, lower, hesitant. "I know. She wasn't supposed to stay this long. We thought she'd get the message." There it was, the message. Not a conversation, not a decision made together. A silent, shame-wrapped eviction, written in cardboard and closed doors. They hadn't spoken to me directly, because they never planned to. They just waited for humiliation to do the work. "She's stubborn," Anna continued. "I think she's playing the victim, acting confused, so we look like the bad guys." "No," Arnie said. "She's not acting." I don't know if he meant it kindly or not, but it didn't matter, because either way, he saw me as not all there. I stood up slowly, my legs stiff, my fingers cold. I walked to the front yard, where my garden used to be, the one I planted the year Arnie turned 10. He'd helped dig the soil. We named each row after a hymn. "Blessed Assurance," I called the tomatoes. Now it was grass, uniform, trimmed, lifeless. I knelt anyway, ran my fingers through the dirt. Not looking for seeds, looking for myself. The woman who baked 6 loaves of bread for the church fair. Who stayed up all night when Noah had croup. Who taught Anna how to roast a chicken when she and Arnie were newly married and terrified of failing. They thought I'd be gone by now, but I was still here, not as an act of pride, as an act of defiance, because every day I stayed was another day their plan unraveled, and deep down, they knew it. "It's just for a little while." That's what Arnie said the first night. He stood at the garage door, holding a bundle of linens like it was some kind of peace offering. "Anna didn't even come out. Just until we figure things out," he said. The blankets were thin. The air was thinner. I didn't ask for a heater, or a pillow, or an explanation, because I knew if I asked, it would become real. I laid the blankets down on the cot I'd cobbled together from moving pads and old seat cushions, covered myself with the Afghan, faced the wall. It wasn't supposed to be permanent. That's how all losses begin. Temporary. First, your name is left off a group text. Then your dishes are moved to the high shelf. Then your room becomes a spare. Then your body is quietly redirected into a colder part of the house. They never say, "You don't belong here anymore." They let the floor say it, the locks, the silence. I counted nights. 1, 2, 6. By the 10th, I knew this wasn't a pause. It was a pattern. I began to notice the little things they stopped offering. Plates at dinner, reminders about appointments, small talk. I was no longer a participant in the household. I was a tolerated echo in the walls. And still, I stayed. Not because I accepted it, because I wanted them to see me endure it. Every morning, I made my tea using the plug-in kettle I kept from my old house. I folded my blanket, wrote one line in my notebook. "I'm still here." I stopped looking to Arnie for help. I stopped waiting for Anna to soften. The garage became my sanctuary. Because there, at least, the betrayal was honest, cold, concrete, undeniable. And in its harshness, I started to remember I didn't owe anyone comfort, especially not the people who dressed cruelty in courtesy. It was 2:17 a.m. when I heard it. The walls of the garage were thin, And at night, when the house slept and the fridge had stopped its humming, voices traveled like wind through hollow space. Anna's voice, low but unmistakably sharp. "She'll adjust," she whispered. "Adjust," as if I were furniture being moved from one room to another. A worn-out chair relocated to the shed until someone needed it again. "She's old," she added. "Routine is comforting for people like that. She'll get used to it." There was no malice in her voice. That's what made it worse. She wasn't angry. She was efficient. "She's not even asking to come back in," Anna continued. "It's working." The silence that followed was worse than any insult. Arnie didn't object. He didn't say my name. I lay on the cot, eyes wide open, staring at the rafters overhead. "She'll adjust," as if the stripping away of my identity, my space, my warmth, my autonomy was a natural process, a gentle evolution, like fall turning to winter. I rolled over and pulled the Afghan tighter, not for warmth, but for memory. I thought about the women at church who asked how I was doing, and how I answered with a smile and a shrug. I thought about the neighbor who saw me taking in groceries from the trunk while Anna stood at the kitchen window, watching me, not helping. I thought about how silence becomes strategy when used by people who pretend to care, and how I had let that silence settle around me like fog. But fog lifts. I pulled out my notebook and wrote, "They're not waiting for me to leave. They're waiting for me to vanish." And then, for the first time since the boxes, I smiled. Because now I had a name for it. And if you can name a thing, you can fight it. I was folding laundry in the garage, my own shirts, wrinkled from sitting too long in a box labeled "donations," when I found the envelope. It was tucked inside a sweater sleeve, thick paper, off-white, embossed with my full name, Almeda Caroline Clark, not Mrs., not Mom, just me. It was the deed to the house, not a copy, the original, signed, stamped, notarized in 1998, the year after my husband died, the year I finally paid off the last mortgage check with money from a part-time church secretary job and jars of coins I'd been saving since Arnie was born. I sat down on the cold cement floor and read every word. The land, the structure, the attached property. It was mine. Still was. Nowhere on the paper was Anna's name, not even Arnie's. I must have cried, but I don't remember the tears. I remember the heat, that slow burning fury that rises not from anger but from insult. The kind of insult you feel when someone tries to steal your name while smiling over dinner. I thought back to the day I handed Arnie the keys. "It's your home now," I said, "until you get back on your feet." He hugged me, called me a blessing. I didn't ask for rent. I didn't demand ownership. I gave it freely, because that's what mothers do. But giving space isn't the same as giving away. And I never signed this deed over. Not to Arnie, and certainly not to Anna. They had moved into my house, turned my room into a gym, locked my belongings in my shed, and sent me to the garage like a guest who'd overstayed her welcome. But I wasn't a guest. I was the only reason this roof still stood. I held the deed against my chest like armor. And then I wrote in my notebook, "This isn't her house, it's mine." They forgot that kindness isn't the same as surrender. And now that I remembered who I was, they were going to remember too. It was by accident. A Wednesday afternoon, breezy, and still too cold for spring, when I smelled smoke coming from the backyard. Not the sharp sting of a grill or the earthy curl of burning leaves. This smoke was bitter. I walked out the side door of the garage, past the empty doghouse, Arnie built when Noah begged for a beagle and turned the corner. There she was, Anna, standing over the fire pit, back turned, a box in her hands. My box, the one with the blue lid. The one I kept under my bed since before Arnie had his first tooth. It held baby shoes, my wedding napkin, my grandmother's last letter. I stopped. She hadn't heard me yet. She opened the lid and pulled out a photograph, held it over the flames, then hesitated. It was Arnie's first birthday, frosting on his eyelashes, me behind him, smiling through exhaustion and joy. She dropped it. The flames licked it instantly. I stepped forward. Stop. She froze, turned slowly. Oh, she said, blinking like she didn't understand. You weren't supposed to. Why? I asked, voice steady, too steady. She looked at the box, then at me. They're just old things. You never open it. You thought you could erase me. No, she said quickly. I thought you'd moved on, that you wouldn't want. You don't get to decide what I want. I stepped toward the pit. She backed up just a little. I reached into the flames with the metal tongs from the grill rack and pulled out what hadn't yet turned to ash, a melted cassette tape, a charred postcard from my sister, my nursing pin, blackened but whole. I looked at her, not with hatred, but with clarity. You don't understand something, Anna, I said. I've already survived more than this house can hold. A fire doesn't scare me. I took what I could save and walked away. Later that night, I wrote in my notebook, they tried to burn me down to silence, but some things don't burn. And I slid the ruined photo into the sleeve of the deed, because even ashes carry memory. It was the sound of a rake that pulled me out of my thoughts. I was in the garage, staring at the burned photograph Anna hadn't managed to destroy completely. The frosting on Arnie's cheeks had melted into a blur, but my hand on his shoulder was still visible, faint. But there. The rake scraped again. I stepped outside. Mrs. Kellerman stood across the fence, her rake paused midair. She was in her gardening hat, sun-bleached and sagging on one side, and her gloves were speckled with dirt. But it was her eyes that caught me. She didn't wave. She nodded. Almeda, she said. Hello, I replied. She leaned on the rake. Saw your things on the curb a few weeks back. I said nothing. She continued. Didn't look like spring cleaning. Still, I stayed quiet. I was going to come over, she said. But I figured if someone wanted to humiliate you in broad daylight, they didn't deserve an audience. My throat tightened. She pointed with her chin toward the house. I've lived next door 27 years. I've seen a lot through those windows. But this, she shook her head. They forgot I was watching. That sentence landed like a rock. I had grown so used to being erased that I hadn't realized someone had seen everything. I looked at her. Why didn't you say something? She shrugged. You weren't ready to hear it, but now. She reached into her pocket and pulled out a small notebook, spiral-bound, the kind she used for her crossword lists. She handed it to me. Inside were scribbled dates, times, notes. March 3rd, boxes moved to curb. Almeda at church. March 7th, Anna speaking to someone on phone. Mentions clearing the space. March 17th, Arnie unloads unknown documents from car. Mailbox never opened by Almeda. Page after page, a witness log. My hands trembled as I held it. I thought I was alone, I whispered. You were, she said, but not unseen. That night, I placed her notebook next to mine. 2 voices, written in parallel. And I wrote one more line beneath it. They forgot the world has windows. It started with a packed bag. A simple one. just my purse, my church shawl, and the notebook I never let out of reach. I set it by the garage door early one morning and sat beside it, sipping my tea from the chipped yellow mug Anna always hated. I let them see me, let them assume. Around noon, Anna peeked through the blinds. An hour later, Arnie appeared in the doorway, arms folded. Going somewhere, he asked, feigning nonchalance. I looked up with a soft smile, just thinking it might be time. Maybe I've overstayed. He didn't hide the relief. Well, if that's what you think is best, I nodded. You've all been so patient. The words tasted like vinegar. He muttered something about helping me pack, but I waved him off. No need. I've got it down to just a few things now. He went back inside. I waited. At 3:12 p.m., I took my bag, stepped off the porch, and circled around to the side of the house. I knew every board of that house, every squeaky step, every drafty window. I crept around the shrubs, crouched beneath the window that used to be mine. Inside, their voices. She bought it, Anna said, laughing lightly. I told you all it would take was a little pressure. Arnie sighed. It still feels wrong. Oh, please, she snapped. She's had her time. We've been more than generous. You said it yourself. She's been writing things down like a lunatic. She's unraveling. She's leaving today, he said. Let's just finish this. That was all I needed to hear. I backed away quietly, heart pounding, but face calm. That evening, I returned to the garage and made no announcement. I didn't bring the bag back inside, let them wonder. Instead, I opened my notebook and began to write, copying every word they said, every sentence. Then I reached into the lining of the bag and pulled out the small digital recorder I'd bought at the pharmacy the day before. I pressed stop. Everything, every syllable, was there. Because I didn't need to scream to be heard. I just needed to listen. Some phrases don't leave you. They stick between your ribs, beneath your skin, behind your eyes. They repeat when the house is quiet and your tea's gone cold. They wait for you in the silence. That phrase came on a Wednesday. I had left the recorder running again, this time on a shelf above the laundry machine, where Anna couldn't see it. She was on the phone, pacing the kitchen, her voice low but fast, clipped and precise. I didn't hear it until hours later, when I rewound the tape. She's still here, Anna said, exasperated. No, she hasn't left. I know we thought she would, but she didn't. She's being difficult. A pause. Then, it's the old problem again. Not Almeda, not Mom, not her. The old problem. She said it like I was a stain. A leak in the ceiling. A creaky stair that wouldn't shut up. And she said it with such ease, as if I'd never been the woman who opened my doors to her, the woman who kissed her forehead at her baby shower, the woman who taught her how to boil pasta when she first moved in, and said, I burn water. The old problem. I pressed pause and sat still, my hands curled into fists. I wasn't angry. I was clear. Because now I knew exactly where I stood in her version of the story. Not as a woman with history, with ownership, with love, but as a loose end, an inconvenient remainder in the equation of her perfect suburban life. That evening, I cooked myself dinner in the garage, canned soup, a slice of toast, and an apple. I lit a single candle on a saucer and placed it on the tool bench like it was fine china. And then I made a list in my notebook, changed the locks, hid the boxes, burned the memories, blocked the shed, called me the old problem. At the bottom, I wrote, she's building a world where I never existed, but I was still here. breathing in her walls, living in her foundation. And one day soon, she'd have to say my name again, this time in front of a judge. His name was Charles. I hadn't seen him in over a decade, but he still answered on the second ring. His voice was deeper, slower now, but when I said my name, he remembered. Almeda Clark, he repeated. Still on Birchwood Lane? I closed my eyes for a second. Not quite. I'm in the garage. He chuckled, not yet realizing the truth. Always so modest. No, I said. I mean it. I'm literally living in the garage. That silence on the other end of the line. It wasn't awkward. It was processing. I could hear his brain catching up to the absurdity. Then, talk to me. I told him everything. The boxes, the lock, the shed, the tea, the note, and most importantly, the deed I'd found tucked inside an old sweater, still in my name, untouched, untransferred. He whistled. That's a legal mess waiting to happen. Is it? I asked. Or is it already here? We scheduled a meeting. When I showed up at his office, coat ironed, hair brushed, notebook in hand, he greeted me not like a client, but like someone returning from the dead. Have a seat, Mrs. Clark, he said, emphasizing every syllable. He laid the deed on the table between us, ran a gloved finger across the signature line. This house, he said, tapping it once, belongs to you, no one else, not your son, not your daughter-in-law. You are the legal title holder. I swallowed hard. I want it in writing, I said. I want to file it. I want a copy in my name. I want a witness. He nodded. And then, I added, I want a letter sent to that house, certified, stamped, formal. He smiled, thin and professional. We can do that. When I left his office, the sky was starting to snow. Soft flakes falling over the windshield of a life that had nearly disappeared. But as I climbed into the borrowed car Helen from church had driven me in, I held the copy of the deed in my lap like a newborn. For the first time in months, I didn't feel erased. I felt documented. My name was on paper, my story was recorded, and the house that tried to forget me would soon remember exactly who built it. The letter arrived on a Tuesday, certified, sealed, delivered with a knock that echoed through the house like a final warning. I didn't see their faces when they first opened it. I was out back, pruning the last rose bush I had secretly kept alive behind the garage. But I heard the tension through the kitchen window, as if the house itself was exhaling for the first time. What is this? Anna snapped. Arnie didn't answer immediately. There was the sound of paper unfolding, then silence, then his voice, tight, flat, controlled. It's the deed. To what? She hissed. To the house. A pause. And then, in a voice I hadn't heard since he was a teenager, rebellious and frightened at once, he read, Legal owner, Almeda, Caroline Clark. He said it like a stranger's name. My name. Is this real? Anna asked. It's dated, he said. Stamped, notarized, filed just last week. I didn't move. I didn't smile. I just listened. You said she gave it to us, Anna whispered. I thought she did, Arnie muttered. She said we could stay. Stay? Her voice rose. You renovated. You changed the locks. You let me throw her life into boxes. She never signed anything, he said. Then came the silence, the real kind. The kind that happens when two people realize they've built a kingdom on stolen ground. I walked in through the side door just as Arnie placed the deed on the counter. He turned toward me slowly. His face was pale. Anna looked like someone who'd swallowed the sun and realized it burned. Mom, Arnie said. We didn't mean. I held up a hand. This isn't a conversation. I said. It's a correction. I picked up the deed, folded it once, slid it into my purse. Then I added, as evenly as I could manage, "You don't live here, I do. And now the law remembers what you tried to forget." Anna opened her mouth to speak, but I was already walking toward the stairs. To my room. Not a guest room. Not a corner of the garage. My room. It took 3 trips. Arnie didn't say a word as he carried the boxes back inside, each one stacked carefully, like he was handling relics instead of the pieces of a life he'd once put out on the curb. He placed them in the living room, one by one, like a man performing penance. I didn't help. I stood at the doorway, arms crossed, eyes dry. Anna was nowhere to be seen. After the last box thudded to the floor, he straightened his back and finally looked at me. "They're all here," he said. "No," I replied. "They're not." He looked confused. "There are things in those boxes you can't put back," I said. "The way you looked away. The nights I spent in the garage. The silence." He opened his mouth, closed it again. I walked past him, opened the box marked bedroom, and pulled out my clock. The one with the chipped base and the faint ticking sound that used to lull me to sleep. I placed it back on the nightstand where it belonged. Tick, tick, tick. He hovered in the doorway. "Where should I put the rest?" "Wherever you found them," I said. "They remember." His shoulders dropped. "She's not coming back." I nodded. "I know." Anna had left that morning. No note, just her closet emptied and the guest bathroom drawer wiped clean. A pair of earrings on the counter, like she couldn't decide whether I was worth parting with them. She was gone. But her echo still lived in the corners, smiling in picture frames, softening in curtains she chose, lingering in the word space like it was sacred. I went room to room, reclaiming them. I unlocked the shed and brought my quilts inside, restored my recipe books to the kitchen shelf, lit a candle in the windowsill where my prayer journal used to sit. The house groaned as it remembered me, but not everything came back. Some things had been burned. Some love, once bent, never straightens. That night, I unpacked my notebook and wrote one last line on the bottom of the most wrinkled page. She walked out with nothing, but I stayed with everything. Spring came late to Idaho that year. The daffodils in the front yard bloomed weeks behind schedule, their yellow heads wobbling in the wind like they weren't sure they still belonged there. I understood the feeling, but slowly, day by day, I began to believe again. I painted the front porch railing, replaced the broken mailbox flag. I bought a new doormat, nothing fancy, just one word in big black letters, home. It felt earned now. Inside, the house was quieter, still, but not sad. The silence had changed shape, less like a tomb, more like a sanctuary. The couch creaked the same way it always had. But I no longer felt like I was trespassing on a life I didn't recognize. I hung up the quilt Anna had called "Too Country" in the hallway, right under the photo of my husband in his Sunday best. He would have been proud. Arnie visits sometimes. He doesn't stay long, and we don't talk about her. We sit on the porch and drink coffee. He asks how the roses are doing. I nod. He brings Noah once in a while, and we water the plants together. The damage isn't gone, but it's seen now, named. I went to the courthouse last week and requested a certified copy of the deed. The clerk asked if I wanted it mailed. "No," I said. "I'll take it with me." I folded it carefully, tucked it into my handbag like a passport, because it is proof that I belong. That my name isn't just something to be whispered behind closed doors or omitted from mailboxes. My name is Almeda Caroline Clark, and I own this house, not just the land or the deed or the key that hangs from a nail beside the sink. I own the walls that remember lullabies, the floor that groaned under holiday dinners, the attic that holds every boxed-up version of me they tried to bury. They forgot I was the foundation, but I didn't. I sit by the window now most evenings with the lamp on and my tea warm. When neighbors pass, they wave. And when they ask if it's still my house, I smile. Yes, I say. And so am I.